It all began on what was supposed to be a regular night on late-night television. The crowd was buzzing, the lights were bright, and Jimmy Kimmel was ready to roll out another episode filled with laughs, quirky banter, and unexpected moments. Among the guests for that evening was none other than Vin Diesel, the action superstar known for his deep voice, intense screen presence, and role as Dominic Toretto in the Fast Furious franchise. When Van walked onto the stage, the audience erupted with applause. But what followed was not the typical celebrity interview. From the start, there was an undeniable tension in the air. Jimmy's usual witty remarks seemed a bit too pointed, and Van, while smiling, had a glint in his eyes that hinted he wasn't entirely amused. The exchange began with light-hearted jokes, but it quickly turned into a peculiar battle of egos, as if both men were vying for control of the narrative. Jimmy, always known for pushing boundaries, asked a series of questions that seemed to poke fun at Van's acting range and the repetitive nature of the Fast Furious films. While the audience chuckled, Van's body language subtly changed as he leaned forward, his smile becoming tighter, more calculated. "So, Van," Jimmy said, smirking, "how many more family speeches do you think you'll deliver before Dom retires?" The audience laughed, but Van responded coolly, "Well, Jimmy, as long as people keep tuning in, I'll keep showing up. Unlike some shows that are broken bar, well, you know." The crowd gasped, sensing the jab, and Jimmy raised an eyebrow. The playful tone had clearly shifted. Instead of steering the conversation back to neutral ground, Jimmy seemed to double down. It was no longer a friendly interview, it had become a duel of wits and pride, each trying to one-up the other on live television. The atmosphere continued to shift as Jimmy brought up a past controversy involving Van's on-set behavior, referencing vague reports of disagreements with co-stars. "There were some reports," Jimmy started, "that you've had a broken bar, let's say a broken bar and tense moments during filming. Are those just rumors, or is there a bit of truth to the legend of Vin Diesel being a difficult?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Van paused, looked directly into Jimmy's eyes, and laughed a deep, genuine laugh that seemed to both unsettle and challenge the host. "You know, Jimmy," he said, "I think the only thing more difficult than me on set is pretending you're funny every night." A mixture of laughter and shock echoed through the studio. It was bold, unexpected, and marked the turning point of the interview. Jimmy, visibly surprised, attempted to recover with a quick joke, but the momentum had clearly shifted. Van was no longer the guest, he was the force dominating the stage. Trying to regain control, Jimmy shifted topics abruptly, but the damage had already been done. The once charming host was now floundering, fumbling through questions that fell flat or failed to elicit the usual laughs. Van, however, was in his element. Calm, cool, and clearly enjoying the awkwardness now permeating the studio. What came next was perhaps the most surprising move of the night. Jimmy, half joking and half serious, suggested they wrap things up early. "I think we've had enough Vin Diesel for one night," he quipped, trying to maintain control. But Van's response? A slow, theatrical laugh. "Well, Jimmy," Van said, rising from his seat, "it's your show. You can end it whenever you want. But I'll still be making movies that people actually pay to watch." The audience, divided between gasps and laughter, watched as Van made his way off stage without waiting for a formal goodbye. It was surreal. A guest had just walked off the show voluntarily or otherwise, leaving the host visibly rattled. What happened backstage added even more fuel to the already blazing fire. Reports began to trickle out within hours, claiming that security had been called not to remove Van, but to ensure no further disruption occurred. But sources close to the show revealed that Van wasn't escorted out. In fact, he lingered backstage for a while, chatting casually with crew members, taking selfies with fans, and laughing as if he had just pulled off the biggest stunt of his career. Later, a clip surfaced online showing Van laughing and saying, "Guess I'm too real for late-night TV." That moment instantly went viral. Memes, tweets, and reactions exploded across social media. Some viewers praised Van for standing his ground, while others criticized Jimmy for losing his cool. The incident had transcended the show. It had become a full-blown cultural moment, and through it all, Van never once appeared angry. If anything, he seemed amused. As the internet exploded with speculation and hot takes, Vin Diesel took to Instagram, posting a short video of himself lifting weights in his home gym. He captioned it, "When late night gets too soft, you go back to the iron." Fans interpreted it as a clear jab at Jimmy, further fueling the flames. Meanwhile, Jimmy's team went into PR mode, releasing a carefully worded statement saying the segment did not go as planned and that they respect all their guests. But the damage had already been done. The public had already chosen sides. Fans of Van praised his authenticity and called out Jimmy for trying to embarrass a guest on live TV. Hashtags like Team Van and Kimmel Meltdown began trending. What had started as an awkward interview turned into a defining moment in pop culture, one where the line between entertainment and ego clashed for everyone to see. It wasn't long before other celebrities began chiming in. Dwayne Johnson, who has had a famously rocky relationship with Vin Diesel, posted a cryptic tweet: "Some people never change, some people never fold. Respect the ones who laugh last." Fans were quick to speculate whether The Rock was taking sides or simply stirring the pot. Meanwhile, Michelle Rodriguez posted a selfie with Van captioned, "That's my dom, always real." The narrative was growing beyond just one show. It had become a full-blown Hollywood moment. Talk shows, podcasts, and entertainment sites began dissecting the interaction. Analysts pointed out that Jimmy Kimmel had previously had awkward interviews but had never lost control like this. Van's calm confidence contrasted sharply with Jimmy's attempt to hold on to the comedic high ground. And in the court of public opinion, the winner seemed clear. The actor had walked in for a regular interview and walked out a legend of late-night rebellion. Days after the incident, Jimmy addressed it on his show. With a forced smile, he joked, "So, in case you missed it, Vin Diesel gave me the Fast Furious exit treatment." The audience laughed, but the energy felt off. It was clear the host was trying to downplay the moment, even as it continued to dominate online conversations. He added, "We'll always welcome Van back, just maybe not with open arms." It was meant to be funny, but many felt it came across as defensive. Meanwhile, Van remained silent in traditional media but let his fans speak for him. The comment sections of his social media were flooded with messages of support, with fans quoting his now viral laugh and praising him for exposing the fake smiles of Hollywood. Even comedy writers started referring to the incident in their stand-up sets. Vin Diesel, without lifting a finger, had become a symbol of unfiltered honesty in an industry full of scripted charm. The saga eventually reached mainstream news. Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, and even CNN Entertainment covered the event, each offering their own take. Was Vin Diesel out of line, or was Jimmy Kimmel unprofessional? Debates raged. Media personalities picked apart the interview frame by frame, analyzing body language, tone, and intent. What stood out to many was Van's unwavering composure. He never raised his voice, never lost his cool. He simply laughed. And that laugh, a deep, confident, dismissive ear, echoed louder than any insult. It became a kind of punctuation mark on the idea that celebrities should conform to a mold when visiting late-night shows. Van broke the mold, and in doing so, sparked a larger conversation about authenticity in the spotlight. Whether you admired him or not, one thing was undeniable: Vin Diesel had changed the game. In the weeks that followed, Jimmy's show saw a slight dip in viewership, while Van's online engagement skyrocketed. Clips of the interview racked up millions of views on YouTube. TikTok creators reenacted the scene. Even merchandise started popping up, t-shirts that read "Too Real for Late Night" with Vin Diesel's laughing face printed on them. For a moment, it felt like the entire internet was reliving that strange, electric evening. And while Jimmy continued hosting, there was a noticeable shift in his tone with guests. He was more careful, more measured. Perhaps the memory of Van's laugh haunted him just a little. After all, Few moments in television leave such a lasting imprint. Fewer still redefine how we view the hosts who run the shows. Eventually, the buzz faded as new stories took the spotlight, but the Vin Diesel-Jimmy Kimmel clash remained a defining chapter in the annals of celebrity interviews. People would still reference it in conversations about media authenticity and the power dynamics between hosts and stars. Late-night hosts treaded more carefully, and guests were emboldened to push back when they felt the tone veered into disrespect. And Van? He kept doing what he does best, filming new projects, living life on his terms, and reminding the world that real doesn't need a script. That night on Jimmy Kimmel Live wasn't a scandal. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful response isn't outrage or retaliation, it's a laugh. To this day, if you search for the moment online, you'll find thousands of comments celebrating the way Van handled himself. He didn't yell. He didn't storm off. He just laughed. And that laugh said everything. It became a kind of cultural shorthand. A meme with meaning. Vin Diesel wasn't just a guest that night. He was a storm in a suit. Calm, steady, but impossible to ignore. And while Jimmy continued his routine, fans knew they had witnessed something rarer, a moment when the veil lifted and Hollywood's glossy image cracked just enough to let something real shine through. For all his movie heroics, it was that simple, human laugh that became his most iconic moment. In interviews years later, Van was asked about the Kimmel incident. His response? "I've got nothing but love for everyone. Sometimes things just a broken bar go sideways, but you always have to laugh. It's the only thing that keeps this world from going crazy." And with that, the chapter closed. Not with grudges, but with a grin. Vin Diesel had walked into a lion's den and left with the audience roaring. Not in fear, but in admiration. It was a lesson, a performance, and a reality check all in one. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, that laugh echoed on air, reminding everyone that even in Hollywood, truth always finds a mic.